Hot damn, you're listening to Season 3 of Frolicking Chronicles.
All right, sis. So today we are talking about Interview with a Vampire. And you and
Interview with the Vampire.
Yes, that's right.
I know, I kind of mix it up. I do mix it up sometimes, I won't lie.
I'll be honest with you. I was recapping a lot of what was going on YouTube, and it's always conflicting. So most days I will say Interview with the Vampire. However, this morning, I'm not even kidding. Eric was even getting roped into some of the YouTube things, and we will have that playlist so you guys can watch some of the content that we're actually watching to reground ourselves. Because as Samantha was mentioning, we read this book a long time ago.
We finished it, I think, before we went to Mardi Gras, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that was kind of our goal.
Yes.
Rest in peace, Anne Rice. As many know, our queen of vampires has passed away this past December in 2021. And we were anticipating going to Mardi Gras to celebrate Trent's belated 21st, and threw Jaden in the mix because he was also 21 by that time.
Yeah.
And we said we need to reread this book because AMC Plus, all these streaming services are dropping October 2nd the Interview with the Vampire TV series. And
we have been on pins and needles waiting for this, and they first were going to release it in August. That's why we were finishing the book,
right? We said
because we were like, oh, if it's going to launch in or drop in August, we want to be ahead of it, and we want to start talking about all the things. But now we know officially it will be dropping on October 2nd. So.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I have to figure out how to do my AMC Plus because I actually am not a subscriber yet. But by the time this airs, I will be.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to be too. I don't know if any of all the streaming things we have here
within the family. Yes. Okay, so do we want to talk about the book first, Miss Anne Rice? And then we could talk a little bit about the movie and then our hype about the show, or how do you want to?
Yeah, I think things are going to kind of cross over.
Yeah, so be patient with us.
Sis, I'll give you the lead and you go for it, and then I will chime in.
I think let's first just talk about Anne Rice just a little bit. Anne Rice, like we said, she just had passed away.
Really?
Yes, late last year. And she and her son, Christopher Rice, had been a part of the new show coming in. But as I was doing a little bit more research on Miss Anne Rice, because you always think of her as in New Orleans kind of thing. And then her and her husband lived in San Francisco. And
41 years they were married.
But did you know that her mom named her Howard?
No. I did not know that. I did not know.
Yeah, and so I was a little confused because I was trying to research about her, and then I said, oh, is that her dad? And no, Anne's birth name is Howard Allen, named after her father. Her mom thought it was an interesting thing to do.
Well, she does
to the Vampire Chronicles fandom.com.
She does say she was born in a house that did not focus on gender specifics at all. Like, it was gender fluid there all the time. So that makes sense.
Well, and she herself will say she doesn't associate with the specific gender herself.
Yeah.
She didn't really associate with the feminine, frilliness and that of the South. Could only imagine. And that as which growing up in Catholicism, defines very much, the male role versus the female role.
Us Catholics know she did part ways with the Catholic Church. She had her reasons. She was of the era, 1940s, where they went to mass every day and took the sacrament every single day. And her curiosity about God and the devil and the atrocities happening on earth, like how could they be? If there really was a God, how could he allow it? Really had her delve into the good and bad of the world, human nature. By the way, I find her incredibly kind and compassionate person in all these interviews.
Well, she believes in social justice. She believes in social justice. She always has. started with the gay activism, but yeah, so she had left the church for some time, but then she also went back to the church, and then she also wrote a book,
Right.
about from Jesus's perspective, which I
Yes.
have never read. But yeah, so Anne Rice, her mother passed away when she was 15, sadly from alcoholism. She was raised in an Irish Catholic family. Rice initially imagined herself becoming a priest before she realized women weren't allowed to. So then she thought about being a nun. Rice often wrote about her fluctuating spiritual journey. In 2010, she announced that she was no longer Christian, saying, "I refuse to be anti-gay, I refuse to be anti-feminist, I refuse to be anti-artificial birth control." So she really was an activist. But then I think as a few more years went by, she actually went back to the church for a while.
Well, probably because we have seen some progressiveness within the church, but it's certain parishes. But then it always reverts back, to the true religion and the catechist. So, or the catechism of the church. So there it is.
But
it's the struggle. That's real.
I think she just went back and forth. So, because then here I have a little note that said she returned to Catholicism in the 90s and split in 2010. Ramses the Damned, The Reign of Osiris, co-wrote with her son, released in 2022 in February. She left an indelible mark on Gothic fiction. The entire vampire mythology and our collective romantic vision of the American South. That was from yahoo.com, Mary Solossi. So, but she was plagued with obviously, some certain things in her childhood. I can't imagine growing up with an alcoholic mother, and just kind of that dynamic, and then being in church every Sunday and all the
Every
things
day.
that
They went
being
to
a
daily
devout,
mass.
being in devout,
They
Catholicism
walked through the
brings.
church every day.
Yeah, and which we sadly didn't get to visit her church when we were in New Orleans last. I forget just time.
The one that she made it was time.
Yeah.
The one that she infamously did a huge book signing for, because the church was basically falling apart, and she wanted to bring attention to it as far as preservation efforts. But that church is not consecrated anymore, and I don't believe it was consecrated when she did her book signing, but she got 2,000 people to show up there.
Wow,
So talk about bringing
incredible.
awareness.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, just a little bit going back on the compassion and kindness thing, and watching a lot of these interviews, and you brought up the social justice, which yes, of course, is very real, but I'm saying her kindness and compassion is on the daily, not just on these big platforms. I mean, just with anybody who went to her balls. In these interviews, there's one that was based out of Chicago. One of her publishing houses people were interviewing her, and just people from the audience standing up and asking her a question. She really gave them her full attention and very thoughtful answers. And that's what I'm saying. I feel like she was just very much a kind and compassionate person, and took time to be in the moment with.
Well, listen, she was observant, she paid attention, she was present, which is what a lot of us humans are lacking at this point. We're always thinking of the things we didn't do or got to do or have to do, and blah, 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 blah. So she was really secure in herself, I believe, that allowed her to kind of have this very strong foundation to be there for everyone.
And by the way, she
Kindness.
had a beautiful romance with her husband, Stan. 41 years being married. That is amazing. Tragically, her husband did pass, and it was quick. Like within 4 months, he got a brain tumor or brain cancer. And it was like, she didn't have time to process all of that, let alone their son. So this is somebody also who has had extreme loss, between losing her daughter, Michelle, and then losing her husband. And if you ever have a chance to hear her talk about her marriage and the raging fights her and her husband would get into, like she said, people thought they were going to get divorced, and it would be over things like, she thought a movie was really well done, and he thought it was ridiculous to even give it the time of day. Like these kind of,
their artist mode.
Yes,
conflicted.
and he supported her. It took her 5 months to write Interview with a Vampire, and at some point he was making enough money. They were both working their way through college. He ended up getting hired at San Francisco University. He was a chairman. It was not his most favorite thing to do, but he said, "I will pay the bills. You stay home and write." And that's how Interview with the Vampire took place.
I couldn't find it, but somewhere I read that when he read her finished book of Interview with the Vampire, he said, "Are you going to be ready for this? Because this book is going to be a hit."
Wow.
You know, he
Yeah.
called it. So she wrote Interview while grieving her 5-year-old daughter Michelle's death. So those of us that have read the book know that Claudia originally was 5 years old, a living little walking doll. Well, not living because she became a vampire. She traced her fascination with vampires back to the 1934 film Dracula's Daughter. So I want to find that and I want to watch that because I think that's so cool. She also believed vampires were earthlings with heightened sensibility and a doomed appreciation of life, which we do see come to, you know, that realization in Louis' struggle, both within the book and the movie. So I think she was a very incredible, interesting past, interesting, you know, view on life, and kind of just that dichotomy of, you know, being raised in religion and then, you know, awakening to there's more than that. And then,
Well,
but also appreciating, you know, there's some good parts.
Yes, and we have talked about this in seasons past where she has said Catholicism is her mother tongue, and we can relate to that. You know, the church I currently work for is not a Catholic church, but I'm appreciating learning their values and all their things that make them who they are, and they are very much more progressive than, you know, the church that we attend to.
I do believe that a lot of people, because the movie came out in 1994, kind of associate that, as most people that see the movie before reading the book or don't make time to read the book, kind of affiliate all the facts of the story with that time frame. And she wrote this in the late 70s, you know, and how can I say, for me, awe-inspiring that she was so aware.
Mid to late 70s. I think it was published in 76, right?
Right. But I'm just saying, like, you know, 1975, 1976, by the time it hits, you know, publishing and everything, really, I mean, you're talking about the era of, you know, Vietnam had just finished and she's living in San Francisco, and, you know, just all the things with the gay rights there, and it's pre-HIV, pre-AIDS pandemic, you know, so just all the things. I feel like, I guess her other book, which you've read, The Witching Hour.
Yeah, I love The Witching Hour.
Is really kind of influenced by the AIDS epidemic, if you will, but I don't know that myself because I haven't read the book.
Really? You read that somewhere?
Yeah, she would say that it's more in line with the things that they were going through and dealing with as friends were passing, and but again, I can't relate to the story myself.
Witches?
I think so, yeah.
That would not be my interpretation of it, but you have to send me that article.
Yeah, in my links. And then she says that I wrote the novels about people who are shut out of life for various reasons. Rice wrote in her 2008 memoir called Out of Darkness, a spiritual confession. This became a great theme of my novels, how one suffers as an outcast, how one is shut out of various levels of meaning, and ultimately out of human life itself. That was in an NPR.org article, December 12th, 2021 interview. And then it goes on to say, long before Twilight or True Blood, Rice introduced sumptuous romance, female sexuality, and queerness. Many took Interview with the Vampire as an allegory for homosexuality to the supernatural genre.
Yeah, that's on point.
So I think that was also, too, if we talk about the movie, Louis and Armand, right? His relationship in the movie was friendship. But in the book, they were romantic. He loved him.
Well, I think the very strong word is companion. There was companionship, and that's a theme throughout the book and the movie that you find. When you were talking about the AIDS things, I just wanted to go and research Neil Patrick Jordan, who was the director for Interview with the Vampire. As you know, it was Interview with a Vampire, right, when the film came out. And that guy gave, how I understood it, watching all these YouTube videos on Anne, gave all his earnings from the film to the AIDS Foundation.
Wow.
So just to loop back to that. So
Right.
I'll try and find the video I watched that talked about that and give you guys the minutes, like the time stamp.
Yeah.
So you guys can hear that too, because I thought that was very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. So sis,
Yeah.
the book,
Mhm.
amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Some is parts like, wait, we're doing spoilers, right?
I think we have to do spoilers. Hopefully,
Okay. Because
here's how it's going to go. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about the things that we've seen on the trailers. Obviously, by now, most of our followers, if you were into vampires, you have watched the actual film with Brad Pitt and with Tom Cruise. The spoilers are going to be mostly from the book because we haven't watched the series yet. That being said, Samantha and I have decided that we are each week going to be talking about either Instagram Live, I think mostly Instagram Live. We haven't figured out which platform, but also doing a YouTube video of sorts, recapping the episode we just watched, so there's slotted to start October 2nd and then every Sunday. So of course we have traveling plans amongst the both of us. So we'll do our best to stay on point, but I think this is going to be an amazing way to stay engaged with our people, to see what they switched up from the book and possibly why they made the decision. Now, I have heard that there is rumor that this is AMC's next Walking Dead, meaning that
they're looking to capitalize on the next big thing for them. I mean, The Walking Dead was such a huge. I don't know that they will ever overcome The Walking Dead. Like that was just for how long? It's 11 seasons.
I think it remains to be seen, but I agree with you. So many seasons. I'm just excited that that's being thrown out there. I mean, that's setting the bar pretty high for a television series. Right. I believe Anne Rice originally thought that this was going to be a HBO show, Showtime.
She wanted it to be because I feel like she wanted to be able to go there with the eroticism or sensuality. Like you can't do that on regular television, and she knew that from the beginning. So
interestingly enough, Eric and I were listening to an interview this morning, and somewhere it was said that the vampires actually never have sex. They don't have sex. So I think they are going to change that in the AMC series for sure. Anne Rice very much says, though, the exchanging of blood is what the intimacy really was for her in the book series. So I thought that's very interesting that, just
I can see that being pretty intimate. So according to screenrant.com, Jessica Beebe, October 8th, 2020, she wrote some of the biggest changes, movie versus book. The movie, Louis is a Spanish lord. Book, he was born French. Okay. Lestat is very cruel in the book, where in the movie, it's kind of like he's just a jokester. He just don't take anything really seriously. But the level of cruelty that he is in the book is horrifying.
Yeah, the hero is Louis. Lestat is the bad guy. But then, how I understand it, by the end of the Chronicles, which there's no way we have read all the Chronicles.
No.
I mean, Samantha and I were going back and forth, and the Vampire Chronicles book that we bought includes 3 of them. Then we heard there was 5 of them, and now I'm hearing there's upwards 13 of them. So if anybody has that answer, comment below and tell us how far you got into the series, because that's for me, especially because I'm not an avid book reader, that's a lot of reading. But I'm down to keep up.
Well, it is hard to choose. I mean, for me personally, I do enjoy reading, but I haven't been as consistent as I used to be or have been in the past. And there's just so many great books, and it's hard to just get them all. So 15, what did you say? 11, 15 Chronicle books?
No, I'm saying I thought 13, but there may somebody was saying 5. I thought 3 originally, but I think it's 13 to 15.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more. So another difference from the book versus movie. Okay. Lestat feeds off of Claudia in the movie, but in the book it's Louis, and that's actually kind of, to me, sad a little bit that it was changed for the movie, because when Louis goes out and finds Claudia with her dying mother, he's at a state of peril, and he's famished and, hungry, and, he's going against his, like, he values life. And so he's going against himself. So to me, I thought that tragedy, they kind of like took from it a little bit, like in the movie.
I think what I've been stuck on is how the book included stories that got him to his points of despair, meaning in the film, he loses his family. In the book, he loses his brother. Well,
he still loses his family in both stories, technically, but in the movie, it's more dramatic in the sense that he loses his wife and his child, right? And so that's his despair, where in the book, it's his brother.
Samantha and I sometimes jump over each other, and she didn't even let me get to that part right there. So what I was trying to express is that in the film, Anne Rice says, yes, it's very different from the book. In the book, it's his brother's death that puts him over the edge.
Yeah.
He's even, because his mother is still alive, his sister's still alive. There's even some forms of accusation that he may have hurt his brother himself. And it's never really said, but you get the idea that it might have been Lestat who took his brother's life, who made that ultimate, push. The thing in the movie when, they developed that background story on how he, Louis didn't want to live anymore. He was just being a drunk and he just didn't care about life, is because he lost his wife, he lost his children. And they felt that got to that emotion much faster than him just losing a brother. And I thought that's kind of interesting how Hollywood
does that often.
It's not wrong. I mean, somebody losing their whole family versus one member of their family would be very significant quickly, So
well, but I think what you're highlighting, and what my point was of saying that he still lost family in both versions, but it was the type of family where he was the lead of his family in the book as well as in the movie. I think if we go back to when was it written, the year 1791 or what was it? Yeah, 1791. He was 25 years old, and he was the head of the household because his father had passed in the book. And so his brother passing really, inflicted this hardship for him.
Well, he felt he was to blame for it also,
because they were arguing right before. Now in the movie with the loss, because that's what most of us relate to is our immediate family, which would be, your partner and your child, and the heartache that would bring. So I feel like that was a really big switch. But yeah, you're right. Hollywood definitely always does that to try and get the impact to them. Most people might not feel that way about the loss of their brother. I don't know.
Right. But the thing is that they have to condense it. So it's just very interesting. Like, I guess, and my point in bringing that specific thing up is that I'm not trying to hate on Hollywood. Sometimes it does make sense, the decisions they make when you're trying to condense a novel into, a 2-hour plus movie, right? So I'm not hating that they made that decision. I don't hate it
at all. You can see how that has to go to get the story done.
The one thing that I wanted to bring up though is that it's immediately when you hear in the AMC series that Louis is 33 years old and not 25 when he's turned was very interesting to me, because that's a very different age. What you have going on at 25 years old compared to what you have going on at 33 years old are two very different things.
Well, and especially back in that era, I would imagine, whether it was 1791 or when does the new series take place? 1910. I mean, look, people didn't live to 100 years old back then, so 33 was of probably significant age.
True.
And I know a lot of people are having some heartache over that, but look, we already got the aristocratic version, in my opinion, of the movie, seeing Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. I'm excited to see the era of jazz coming, and the Art Deco. I mean, before that a little bit, but 1910 sounds kind of fun to me.
Well, we love that era anyway. I mean, I think we're more into the 40s, 1920s, the Flappers vibe. That's what they're going to get to. I do understand the dynamic of them not wanting to go to the late 1700s, because number one, can the audience relate to that? We've talked about this, even the Academy, the Academy loves a period piece. But maybe the modern audience, which we keep hearing that phrase over and over again in this whole thing, is not going to want a late, 1776.
No, look at,
Hey,
I realize this is going to air in a couple more weeks, but the Queen just passed of England, and we're seeing on Black Twitter and Irish Twitter, there are people of this generation that aren't so sad about the Queen. So nobody wants to see this kind of hierarchy of power amongst the rich, the poor, and also slavery. So I'm sure that, you cannot, I think it's very hard to not associate the South with slavery, plantation owners, all this kind of thing. And so I'm sure the smart people at AMC Plus, if they are looking for the next Walking Dead hit, they needed to make it somewhat relatable. Think about what's been happening in the world and in our country for the last few years. I'm sure, but I'm definitely excited to see. I have great hopes that this is going to be one of the most entertaining series for us vampire fans. Anne Rice, the fact that her son is still working on the show, gives me I'm happy for him. He's lost his family. He himself has lost his family.
Yes, how I understood it, he's actually doing a lot of the script writing. That's how I understood it. So I didn't even know it went that deep. I thought, okay, he's involved, he's a producer, but how I'm getting across information is like, whoa, wait a minute. They actually leaned into Anne and leaned into him to write the scripts.
Yeah, we'll be looking close to see the the credits. Yeah, because I know that I read that he was writing a script, like the prequel for Lestat. They were writing that together, and that had been what they originally had hoped to bring to television. But however, things have worked out now.
The book Lestat really was successful from out the gate. Interview with the Vampire wasn't. She said it was actually kind of a flop of for as far as books being published and then selling out. She had her own controversy with Tom Cruise when the movie finally was going to be made. I think that was 1994. She didn't want Tom Cruise to play him. She has like a whole, and Samantha can totally delve into the casting of Anne Rice. Like she really
had a total brevity of characters she had in her mind. I'm gonna put it's already in our show notes, the links to some of the articles that we read, and but yeah, she was not keen on Tom Cruise, but he grew on her. He grew on her.
Who are you? What are you doing in my house? I've come to answer your prayers. Life has no meaning anymore, does it? The wine has no taste. The food sickens you. There seems no reason for any of it, does there? But what if I could give it back to you? Pluck out the pain and give you another life. One you could never imagine. And it would be for all time. And sickness and death could never touch you again. Don't be afraid. I'm going to give you the choice I never had.
And he took the role very seriously, and he, look, I think we talked about this the other night in a couple texts. People are fuming about the casting of the AMC Plus because it isn't this,
all these words,
hetero patriarchy,
too woke. I'm not having it. And Samantha is right. We were texting back and forth the other night, and maybe at some point we should actually screenshot some of the texting. That would be hilarious for you guys to read through that. I was so upset with this YouTube person
my text. Be aware. No, I don't know if I did, but
and I said, who is this guy? A lot of these YouTubers are claiming they read the book. They're like super fans, and this is too woke, and they're concerned. And then and of course it's clickbait, like Samantha says, and here I am getting the bait, and I say, there's no way he read this book. There's no way he read this book.
But he said he read the book.
He said he was an avid fan of Anne Rice, and I thought, how is this possible? Because the big controversy is, and we love him from Game of Thrones, you
Yes,
know,
great word.
Jacob Anderson. And he, when I'm not going to say I wasn't like had to take a second look, like, oh wait, they casted him. I mean, but I was excited and I wanted to know more. So that curious card versus concern card definitely overpowers for me. And I thought to myself, did they not realize Brad Pitt was Creole in the book? And Samantha and I are going to go back and forth on this a little bit, because somewhere I read in the book that Brad Pitt was Creole, or identified as Creole, as Samantha said. And I remember thinking to myself when I was reading the book, oh my gosh, why did they cast Brad Pitt then? So this has been a layered conversation for Samantha and I, because he is described the way Brad Pitt looks in the book. But our mindset of what a Creole person looks like.
Well, no, for me, well, he was born in France in the book, but on page 4, the vampire utterly white and smooth, brilliant green eyes. But that's because he's a vampire. He has white and smooth, right? Because it, he has no real.
So you're saying he became that after he was turned.
Yeah, but then the vampire's full black hair, the waves that were combed back over the tips of the ears, the curls barely touch the edge of the white collar. He is 25
So he wasn't
years.
blonde.
No.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, in my mind, I was like, they didn't cast Brad Pitt correctly. I love Brad Pitt as that character, there was just so many great things about the 94 film. And once again, to the ode of Anne Rice and her brilliance, the whole gender fluid thing. And she wrote all her characters bisexual. So that was the other thing in these too woke videos, like they need to get right with the Lord and stuff like that. And I say, how are you an Anne Rice fan and you do not know that her characters are always bisexual and there's no gender specificness?
They're gender fluid.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, ooh, who is this person and why is he getting so many views? Like, this is crazy.
You know what it is because we're all hungry for more. We're all hungry to hear anything we can about this show. And sometimes that's a rabbit hole of ridiculousness because these people, and so that's why we're not going to say who this YouTuber was, but I did watch it, the next day, and I was like, oh gosh, please, here's what I'm going to say too.
Oh gosh.
If you are of the woke, using that as a derogatory insult or concern about wokeness, then to me, you're probably leaning a little too far alt-right, and there's not enough open-mindedness to appreciate what we have before us, in my opinion.
Also, Anne Rice was extremely woke in the 1960s.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Her mind was liberated, even growing up with a devout Catholicism household. Her mind was open, love all, right? Be kind.
Yeah.
What she loved about the church was the social justice aspect, which we've seen a lot of people get away from,
And that when she was growing up, her Catholicism also included meditating on all the moons. On the moon.
I didn't read that or hear that. Wow.
Yeah, I just, because I've been immersed in this, just cave of Anne Rice. I mean, she's a very fascinating person, incredibly fascinating person.
So fascinating, incredibly interesting, scared of the dark.
Well, and by the way, she's crazy cool. I'm telling you, and crazy. She has said, and this interview, Eric was like jaw dropped. Going back to her social justice and all her causes, because of course most of the interviewers during that time, I'm talking like in the 70s and 80s, were male, and so they always want to talk about her eroticism,
of course,
those things that they brought in. And then so let's talk about prostitution, and so you're okay with people like using their sexuality, whatever. And she goes, no, actually I don't support prostitution because of the exploitation of women. Boom. I was like, wow, yes, and so then different from a stripper, right? Different from a stripper who chose the thing. But let me finish this, because I think somewhere Anne Rice was the influence for a very popular show called Dexter, because this is what she says in the video. in the interview, she says, many a time she has fantasies of driving around in her limo lined with plastic and killing all the pimps.
Wow.
And I said that. So I'm like, and both Eric and I immediately, Dexter, we're like, this
Wow.
is crazy brilliant. And yeah, so there's a bit of
There you go. It's a
vigilante
fine
there.
line between, being psychopath, sociopath,
Yeah.
or, moving
But
to
the
the
fact
dark
she was even
side.
putting this in her wheelhouse, like, oh
Yeah.
man, I'm gonna drive around my limo and I'm gonna, line it with plastic and kill all these people, because it hurt her heart to know this exploitation is
Right,
happening.
Right, it still does. But no, what I was gonna say was interesting is that you had watched interviews with male interviewers, where I had watched a couple with more female. So
I
added
had
them
both.
to our
I had both.
playlist. But the two that I watched was a female lead. One was
So did she have
more
white
with
hair?
Christianity. Blonde or
No.
white?
The
I don't know.
The Chicago one is her friend. I feel like her name is Alice, maybe.
I don't remember that closely.
I believe that she published Interview with the Vampire. I believe she published a lot of books. That one was good, and that will be in our playlist, because at about 2803 and 2830, that's kind of interesting. Those numbers are all in there. They start talking about Oak Alley Plantation, which Tamantha has visited and we've talked about in previous seasons. And she brings up, and I say she, I mean Anne, brings up how in the film they used Oak Alley Plantation, but that wouldn't have been correct, because Brad Pitt would have been living in a Creole plantation and they look vastly different. There's not these two galleries, and as we know from the Laura plantation, it would have had a color to it, kind of to me like a terracotta color. I don't
know why I always feel like it was yellow, but
it was yellow.
They had to whitewash them to hide that they were French. Is that correct?
Yes.
So they had to paint them white along the river, and then when the times changed, they got to turn it back to the vibrant colors that the Creoles were known for. But to your point, people also forget that there were free people of color in the French Quarter in New Orleans.
Did you mark that part in the book?
I probably did.
I marked it. I'm going to try and read it, and it's
okay.
And forgive my pronunciations, because it's a bit of an excerpt, but I think that our viewers would find this interesting. But let me describe New Orleans as it was then and as it was to become, so you can understand how simple our lives were. There was no city in America like New Orleans. It was filled not only with the French and Spanish of all classes who had formed in part its particular aristocracy. I'm saying that word wrong.
Aristocracy.
Yes, dang it! Why I'm going to spell that word? Jeez, I tried to practice the word, but I still mess it up. There you go. I'm still spelling that wrong. But later, with immigrants of all kinds, the Irish and the German in particular, then were not only the Black slaves, yet unhomogenized and fantastical in their different tribal garb and manners, but the great growing class of free people of color, those marvelous people of our mixed blood and that of the islands, who produced a magnificent and unique caste of craftsmen, artisanship, and poets, and re-owned feminine beauty. So they talk about it in the book, and Eric's gonna laugh at me that I messed up.
What page is that?
Page 39.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, when you are reading the book, those story bits stick with us. And so I'm going to say both you and I, seeing the casting of Jake Grey Worm from Game of Thrones, we were excited. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, person of color is because it is too, like we were talking about, free people of color. The Laura plantation, that was a Creole plantation, they owned slaves because it was profitable. Well, eventually became, because there was no heir, so she became the heir, right?
Which leads to another part of the book that people don't know about it unless you read it, is Bobette's character. I hope that we see some facets of Bobette in the AMC.
Oh,
because Louis loved him a Bobette. They lost her brother, so he goes to her almost like a dark angel of sorts and encourages her to run the plantation herself. Do not just go and get married. and
You can do this.
you can do this kind of thing. And it's much more complex in the book, but that's the highlight reel of it.
Yeah, and the trueness of feminine power, he was helping her along to figure out, to learn how to do, run the plantation. So that was very interesting, I think, in the book as well. Frenier, Babette's brother, exactly. Louis was horrified that he would be attacked by Lestat. And I think that he actually had an admiration for Frenier himself,
Quite possibly, because he was always trying to protect him, because Lestat had already had his, like, that kid prey to him.
Yes, Lestat wanted to get that guy, kill him. And I just felt like Louis had a deep love and adoration for him. Maybe it was his own possibilities that kind of led him there.
That too.
So the book is, if
brother,
you
like having that, now his brother wasn't alive to see his brother grow to that age of being that person.
Right. But it was also interesting that his brother was a religious, Louis' brother that passed away. Was it Patrick? Was a religious fanatic and had visions and wanted to be a priest.
Very much fanatical.
Yeah. So the book was so interesting, and Armand's character doesn't get that much play in the 1994 movie, where actually Louis and Armand go off to travel the world and have a very
can we backtrack just a little bit though?
Sure.
Let's talk about why Lestat and Louis even cross paths. What they do get correct in the film and in the series up to come is that Lestat was, by all accounts, stalking Louis because he wanted that plantation.
He wanted the money.
He
came from a poor family, or he came from not of means, where he saw the money.
He had to work on the farm, and he had to, and his dad wasn't supportive of all the books he was reading and all these things. So it's an interesting character arc too, from the book to the film, because you get this definite idea, like he's annoyed with Louis always reading, and then when Claudia comes into the picture, that he's they're both
teaching her
arts, and they're all the languages and all the things, and he's like annoyed. But then when in the book, he's taking care of his father, and he needs to continue to take care of this blind old man. And so I said, oh my gosh, like what a missed opportunity to not talk about these stories. I hope that AMC will talk about these stories, but I don't know if they will or not. It was just, to me, very interesting dynamic in the book that he was looking for a place to help caretake for his father.
Well, and that's a real concern for many people, having to take care of their elderly parents.
And because the dad is blind, he doesn't know that they're not eating dinner at the dinner table.
Yeah, all the things that the slaves notice.
Yeah, and the servants are getting suspicious, like, oh, they're actually have empty plates and just clanking their forks.
Okay, so you also brought up a excellent kind of highlight for me when we're talking about Claudia, and how Louis encouraged her to be educated and read books and learn how to play music and be, into the arts of sorts. Where Lestat actually in the book, and even in the movie, just kind of dresses her in the most fabulous of child clothes and fashion, and kind of just this little plaything in a way. But I want to say that many people, some of these reviews that we've seen are aghast that Claudia is also of a mixed race or is older, casted at 14 instead of 5. But here's the thing, Claudia, in her body, she's trapped in a child's body in both the book and the movie, but yet her mind has grown and evolved. She's a grown woman, and this is like, if you go back to Twilight, why children were, their children in those Twilight books couldn't evolve or grow. They were always trapped as a toddler, always trapped as whatever. No, Claudia was incredibly smart.
Yeah, and hundreds of years old by the time.
Yes.
And struggling that her body was stuck in this thing. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And then let's just talk about it really quickly. I think that Claudia, and I don't have the actress's name down, she is the perfect representation of both Louis and Lestat in the AMC Plus version, because if this is their child, as we were talking about gay parenting in some aspects, right? Because Lestat in the book brings home Claudia as a gift to Louis kind of like, oh no,
Yeah.
this will be our child, you know?
Yes.
So
I love
there's
that part in the book, by the way.
yes, me too. And I just think like, wow, Anne Rice, like, it was so much fun to reread the book because back when the movie came out, you know, whenever the movie's coming out, I'm like mad rushing to like finish the books. And so you kind of forget little tidbits or forget some fun facts or forget just some of the cool story elements. And because the movie's so much easier to rewatch, you kind of gravitate to those talking points versus what is in the book. So I think that, I don't know how many of you joined us on our journey for the virtual book club, which you can follow on our Instagram at Frolicking Chronicles. That's where we normally announce first what we're going to be reading. And I mean, it was just, for me, just quite enjoyable. And because there was such a big time lapse between us finishing the book and going to New Orleans, which you guys know, our Patreon members have seen our little visit to Anne Rice's, the Rice family tomb in Metairie, Louisiana. It's like, I don't know, it was just such a great, I feel like we're so lucky this year to get so much.
We were, and we wouldn't have I mean, it was just because that was already on our calendar. So we didn't know she wasn't feeling too well or however that all went down. But definitely I told Samantha, no, we are Ubering over there. We are making a day of it. Mardi Gras is amazing, but it was cool to have just that peacefulness at that cemetery that day, and just think about all the things over the decades that Anne Rice has brought to the table.
Okay, so I realize we've been talking, I don't know, I'm not looking at a time clock here, but we haven't talked about our cocktail.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to tell you guys about our cocktails this evening, this afternoon, whatever time it is. Okay. We chose for this episode a red wine spritzer. Okay. This is one of my go-to easy pour, refreshing cocktails at the end of a work day, especially right now. We're in the beginning of September. It is muggy. And I'm telling you, this is also how to not waste your wine. If you crack open a bottle of wine for cooking or, just having a little red wine with your pasta, the next day, pour 50% into your little wine glass with ice and top it off with some sparkling water. I'm telling you, or sparkling soda. And then you garnish with the orange slice. This is such a, I don't know, to me, it's just, I love this, a red wine spritzer for so many reasons. And tip, I used to have to be the cocktail wife for my husband's many cocktail parties and different things he had for his work. You're hydrating as you're also having a little alcohol. Okay.
That's really, I mean,
so, and if you because sometimes you're in these kind of crowds where everybody's just drinking, it's just, just give me a little bit more soda water. Give me a little bit more soda water. So I love it. But I'm going to confess to our Patreon and podcasters that because we started this at like 11 and we have some things we're doing later today, I'm just drinking pomegranate juice with sparkling water right now, which looks like a red wine spritzer. And so last night I had a red wine spritzer.
And I'm cheating.
Look at your cool glass.
Okay, by the way, this was at Total Wine for $12.99.
Oh my gosh.
On it. And it was a total impulse buy. And I loved it. So
that's so much fun.
And this is just a blood orange. I don't know if it's considered soda or what. I put it with the peach because once again, Samantha said it's early in the day.
Yeah.
And driving later. But we will do, Samantha will show you at some point the cocktail with the wine spritzer, which would be amazing.
Yeah, we'll do a little thing for Instagram or TikTok.
And
I don't know.
If anybody was curious what type of plantations that Louis actually owned, they were indigo plantations, which were quite.
The dye.
Yeah, they made lots of money. So that's how he got a lot of his things. And then as he navigated his new life, he would give money to his sister to invest with her husband. And that was a whole funny bit because he's like, her husband's an idiot, but he's, like a harmless idiot kind of thing. And so he wouldn't ask any questions. So it kind of worked out for his favor,
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to say too, though, that one thing I could not, going back to the book versus movie, and I feel like we're going to see a little bit of this scene in the AMC Plus, is that, listen, these vampires are not afraid of crucifixes and can go into churches. And Louis, when he murders the priest in the book,
and that's very different from what they're showing on the AMC trailer. They're showing that killing the priest.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
And I thought,
I feel like we need to do our own review of what is these videos people make, the reactionary videos.
Right. And like I said, I really am feeling strongly that Samantha and I are going to do as extended content talking about each episode that comes out. So how frequent, because obviously we all have busy lives. I can do it once a week, but worst case scenario, we'll be doing them every other week, and we'll just recapping like 1 to 2 episodes together, depending on how time is. I thought the other thing, and I'm going to be interested when they go to Paris. Okay. Because we know in the 1994 film, Claudia masterminds a plan to get rid of Lestat. They don't know all these vampire rules and all these things because Lestat,
the vampire etiquette.
Yeah, he didn't keep them in the know, and we're finding out that may have been very intentional. It may not have been. We don't know. And I think they are going to lean into who actually created Lestat at some point, and I think that will be very interesting dynamic. Okay, that being said, when they get to Europe, sis, did you not find it totally mind-blowing, like that there are vampires over there, but they were not nice and fantastic?
Not only were they weren't nice,
they were scary.
They were scary, but also I feel like doesn't Armand talk about, like, because in the book, I believe Claudia and Louis kind of come across a vampire that they're curious to meet so that they can ask him questions, and they find out he's basically like a zombified vampire. He's just kind of an animal that just eats and, he exists, but there's no mind
he's
growing.
Destroying, no, and that's the thing. They get to the shore, and to me, I don't know why while I was reading, I felt like it would be like the mountains in Romania or something like this. And the creature almost had undertones to me like a werewolf. Very beastly, very rugged, tattered clothes is how I kind of remember it. And no regard for life, no regard for fellow vampires. He goes to attack Louis, and Louis is protecting Claudia at that point, and Louis then destroys this guy. I mean, they
obliterates him. Don't mess with my kid.
And I can just read a little bit here. It says, then a faint scent came with the wind. It was the scent of blood, at once arousing me against my will, the warm, sweet scent of human blood that was flowing. And then I sensed the smell of a living flesh, and I heard in time with the feet a dry, hoarse breathing. And this is just getting into like that creature thing. And when they get to this village, they actually pass a cemetery. They see that somebody's being buried, but somewhere it's like throwing you off with like the descriptions. Like it didn't seem like a normal funeral. It doesn't seem like, even just the differences would be because it's in a foreign country, like there was something more going on there. And sure enough, you find out that this village has been affected by this creature. And so now that this young woman, a wife of a painter, has been killed, they're anticipating her turning into a creature. And so there's like a whole thing in the book.
Yeah, and it was so fascinating. But I'm going to tell you, to that specific moment, this zombified vampire, what have you, just kills to kill, doesn't matter. Armand specifically talks about their kind, our kind. If you do not feed your mind, if you are not constantly trying to expand the mind, then that's how you end up being that kind of creature. And I thought,
come on, Anne Rice, are you telling me, like she's encouraging people to always evolve?
Okay? Keep learning. Keep learning.
Right now in our social, our political environment, what I find very hard to contend with is people who stay in their box. Okay, I get it. I am trying to get in everybody's business, and I understand the thing of staying in your lane, but you have to understand and be aware and grow your mind, as Samantha just said. That's awesome. I feel like she's constantly layering in her personal things, her personal passions in her heart about social injustice and all the things into these books. If you really start to peel away.
And that's what I was saying too, even to when I'm reading different books, I'm also reading, whether it's self-help books or, it's Untamed and, social justice books. And then I'm trying to fit in these fun books and, these story books. And so there's only so much time for me. In fact, I've actually even introduced audiobooks. People like get your Audible or whatever you do to listen to books, because sometimes you can just listen to books while you're doing your chores, cleaning your house, or, in
Driving.
the office,
Yeah.
driving. And this is a very good way to open your mind to other types of categories and, check out different subject matters besides just having, but I love a book in my hand. Don't get me wrong. That is my favorite
I
thing.
love the paper.
I love the skin to
vibe,
paper
the
feel.
smell.
Yes, but
Yes, I will say this. Anne Rice did say in the beginning, she felt like she could relate to Louis much more than she could relate to Lestat. But as the chronicles grew, she found herself relating more to Lestat. And I thought that was very powerful. And she does say Lestat had the powers of an angel. And so when you think of how Tom Cruise played that character, I thought, you know what? He kind of did have that angel vibe a bit, the beautiful jawline. I
can
the
see
pale
that.
skin, just the way his charisma in the film. And I think that's why he didn't ultimately grow on her. I mean, not her first choice, but when you say Tom Cruise did take the role very seriously, I understood that he was married to Nicole Kidman at the time. They were living in Paris, and he really immersed himself into reading the book and all the things so that he could become Lestat. And I think Tom Cruise pulled it off. But I am super excited though about this Sam Reed guy. I don't know Sam Reed. I don't know much about him at all. I also know that she was not like, she was like, okay, but once again, she's very open. What I like about Anne is like, she'll say what she said, but then she'll say, but this is where I'm at now. And I kind of like, I love Tom Cruise.
She's not only reflective, but she's willing to say like, it worked out. Like, and I enjoyed it.
She's not so stubborn, or she's not so, willful.
Okay, so here's also too, I'm gonna say, like, let's talk about Louis' character, book, movie. Brad Pitt's character is, I feel like we're gonna see, because the guy that wrote the show or is producing the show, whatever, he said that we're going to see a stronger Louis in this one.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see that, because even Brad Pitt has said himself that he just had a hard time playing this kind of weakling, not weakling, but just more of a softer character, maybe more passive in ways. I thought that was also very interesting kind of talking point that, but I actually appreciated the softness of Louis.
That morning I was not yet a vampire, and I saw my last sunrise. I remember it completely, and yet I can't recall any sunrise before it. I watched the whole magnificence of the dawn for the last time as if it were the first. And then I said farewell to sunlight and set out to become what I became.
So I'm curious to see how it's going to come out, because I just feel like it's okay to be masculine and also have sensitivity. You don't have to be always just this hetero or caveman type person,
Right.
And so, so I'll be interested to see how that translates to the new TV series.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And the guy who's doing the AMC series, he was very involved. He was the director of Breaking Bad and
Better Call
Saul. And so I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be listen, TV is escapism, as is movies, and so bring it on. Like, I feel like this is great. I haven't been watching The Walking Dead very much. I know it's in the last season. I actually was kind of like, oh, I guess I'll be able to if I get AMC Plus now because of Interview. But I honestly, I don't even know that I need to even catch up on Walking Dead because it's kind of just the same old thing in my opinion. But I'm looking forward to the vampire series to see, how it goes. And I think it's just going to be fun to watch in perfect time in October,
Yeah,
So,
it's going to be awesome.
October 2nd, this Sunday, right? When this show airs, we're going to be perfect into Halloween and finally into fall. Don't know we'll get that cool, crisp weather.
Right. I hear you, sis. Well, hot damn, you guys, if you haven't read the book, please do. I think you'll still be pleasantly surprised, even if it's a light read in between the AMC show and then revisiting
into the
the film.
audiobook, even,
Yeah.
I would say, because
It would be good. Now, the audiobook, I will say, threw me off.
Oh, it did? Is it because of the narration or?
Yeah, it's because it's
Oh.
very much spoken. Louis has a very strong French accent.
Ooh.
And I couldn't get my brain to connect Brad Pitt and like the book and then the French accent. So I went back into the book. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good
All
point.
right.
Okay. Well, sis, cheers. Our faux red sangrias. I'm sorry. Red wine spritzer.
All right, guys. Cheers.